Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Insurance, right? Total snooze fest. But actually, scratch that. Because today we're looking at something totally different. We are talking about a seriously dangerous, hidden financial trap that's threatening Australian businesses right now. It's not dry admin stuff, it's a trap that flies completely under the radar, right up until it is way too late. So, let's dive into this. Picture this. If your business flooded today, like right now, are you completely sure your insurance would pay out what you'd expect? Most business owners would probably just confidently nod and say yes. You pay your premiums, you've got a policy, so you assume you're totally safe, right? But honestly, that assumption, that's exactly where the danger lies. There's this quote from Pocket that really hits the nail on the head. Most Australian businesses are underinsured, and they find out at claim time. I mean, wow, it's a pretty stark, kind of ominous reality, isn't it? This isn't the sort of trap where you get a polite little warning letter in the mail. No, this thing springs at the absolute worst possible moment, when you've literally just suffered a massive loss and are desperately relying on that safety net to, save your livelihood. So meet the villain of our explainer today. It's called the averaging clause. It's this standard little provision buried incredibly deep in the fine print of most property and business interruption policies, which, is exactly where insurance companies just love to hide the important stuff. Now, the huge misconception here is people think underinsurance only hurts you if your entire building burns down to the ground. That is totally, absolutely false. The averaging clause legally allows your insurer to slash your payout even on a really minor partial claim, just because your overall coverage doesn't match the true current replacement value of your assets. Let's break this down and translate the formula into plain English, because this is exactly how the math works against you. Basically, your payout equals your sum insured divided by the true value multiplied by the claim amount. Or to put it super simply, if you only insure your business for 70% of what it's actually worth today, your insurer's only going to pay 70% of your claim. Period. It genuinely doesn't matter how small or localized the claim is. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing it in action. Imagine you own a cafe. A fire breaks out and does $180,000 worth of damage to the kitchen. Total nightmare. But hey, your claim is perfectly legitimate, right? Well, because you insured the whole fit out for $400,000 instead of its true current replacement cost of $600,000, you are legally only covered for 67% of any loss. So the insurer pays out $120,000, and you are left absorbing a massive $60,000 gap right out of your own pocket. For a small business, that can be absolutely fatal. And hey, it's not just physical damage either. Let's shift gears to a business interruption or BI claim for a marketing agency. Say 3 years ago, their revenue was $400,000, so they wisely set their BI cover at that number. But then they grew. Awesome, right? Now the revenue is $700,000. But then a flood hits, shutting them down for 4 months, which causes a $280,000 loss in gross profit and fixed costs. Because they never updated their policy to match their growth, they're only covered for 57% of their true value. The end result? A devastating $120,400 shortfall. And that is all just because of standard business growth without a policy update. So why is this happening so much lately? Let's look at the COVID inflation factor. 31%. Let that jaw-dropping number sink in for a second. According to CoreLogic data, construction costs have surged more than 31% across Australia since the onset of COVID. So look, if you set your building's sum insured back in 2020 or 2021, I can almost guarantee you it is drastically understated today. You literally couldn't rebuild that exact same structure for the same price anymore. Let's move to the next point and see how this all builds up, because it really is a perfect storm. It's not just construction costs spiking over 31%. We've got supply chain pressures driving equipment and IT replacement prices way up. You've got growing revenues totally outpacing old business interruption cover. And on top of all that, commercial rebuilds are taking so much longer than they used to before COVID. All of these factors just stack up, making a policy from even a couple of years ago completely obsolete today. Okay, let's get specific. Here are the 3 big underinsurance traps. And this brilliantly illustrates our very first trap: confusing market value with replacement cost. Listen, when you insure a building, you shouldn't insure it for what it would sell for on the real estate market. That's not how it works. You have to insure it for what it would cost to demolish the ruins, hire new architects, buy the materials at today's incredibly inflated prices, and rebuild the whole thing from scratch. That is replacement cost. And that is exactly why you need a proper reinstatement valuation from a professional quantity surveyor, not just a standard real estate appraisal. Moving on to trap number 2, Stagnant business interruption cover. We literally just saw this with the marketing agency example earlier. The massive danger here is setting your BI sum when you first launch your business, or maybe at some past renewal, and then just forgetting to increase it as you scale up. Your business interruption cover has to pay your ongoing fixed costs, like your rent and your payroll, plus your lost gross profit. If those numbers have gone up in real life, but they've stayed flat on your policy, well, you are heavily underinsured on what is often the most expensive type of claim a business can ever face. And a huge part of that business interruption trap is your indemnity period, which basically just means how long the policy actually pays out for. Pocket specifically recommends an indemnity period of 18 to 24 months minimum for most SMEs. You might be wondering why so long? Well, like we mentioned, commercial rebuild timelines are dragging out way longer than they used to. A standard 12-month policy might totally run dry long before your doors are actually ready to reopen. Okay, the third trap is outdated stock and contents values. For your stock, your sum insured absolutely must reflect your peak seasonal levels, not just your average across the year. I mean, think about it. If a fire hits right before your busiest season, when your warehouse is totally packed to the brim, an average sum is just not going to cut it. Also, if you've bought new IT systems or upgraded your machinery, you have to actively add them to your schedule. If they aren't explicitly listed on there, they simply aren't covered. Right, so how do we handle this? Let's talk about how to fix it before claim time. The good news here? Fixing this hidden trap is incredibly cheap, especially when you compare it to the devastating cost of a ruined claim. Let's just quickly walk through the economics. An expert broker coverage review to identify your gaps and update your sums insured, that takes maybe 30 minutes, and it is completely free. Getting a quantity surveyor out to do a proper reinstatement valuation, that's usually around $500 to $2,000 depending on your property. And what if you need to increase your sum insured by, say, 20% to close the gap? It's usually just a super modest adjustment to your premium. We're talking pennies to protect hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the crucial point is that you can take control of this right now. It's not out of your hands. Here is a really simple, actionable checklist that you can execute before your very next renewal. Step 1, check that your business interruption revenue actually matches your current gross profit. Step 2, revalue your buildings with a quantity surveyor. And Step 3, update your stock to its absolute peak value. And then call your broker to update your schedule. Easy as that. To wrap things up, I really want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. Is your cover actually keeping pace with your business, or are you paying good money for a safety net that's just full of holes? Look, underinsurance is almost always completely unintentional, but the great news is that it is also almost always fixable. Please don't wait until claim time to find out the hard way. Book a free 15-minute coverage review with the team at Pocket and close those gaps today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely stay protected out there.